Hello again, my name is Beth Hill. I'm the Outreach and Education Manager for the North Dakota Forest Service. And today we are talking about how to identify deciduous tree species. So forests cover about 30% of the Earth's surface, and that contains about 3 trillion trees. But when you think of North Dakota, forests typically are not what most people think of first. North Dakota is characterized as a prairie state due to its topography, soils, and climate that promote perennial grasses and forbs and limit the natural succession to forest land. Despite these physiographic challenges for trees and forests, several diverse and unique forest resources persist in the state. Forest and tree resources found in North Dakota include upland forests, riparian forests, conservation plantings, and community forests. Native forests, including upland and riparian forests, encompass 815,000 acres, or 1.8% of North Dakota's total land area. Both eastern deciduous forest types and western coniferous forest types are found in the state. Our deciduous forest types comprise approximately 72% of the state's forest land, so the vast majority. The scarcity and limited distribution of native forests in North Dakota underscore their importance as these resources confront growing pressures like invasive pests and conversion to non-forest land. Upland forests can be found throughout the state, but are most prevalent in the eastern half and northern areas of the state. The majority of these forests consist of deciduous species, most notably quaking aspen, paper birch, and bur oak. A riparian zone is the area between a body of water and the adjacent upland terrestrial zone. It's identified by soil characteristics and distinctive vegetation that requires an excess of water. If you take a look at the map I have here, you'll notice that the majority of our forests and woodlands marked with this green color actually does follow along these river systems, a lot of those riparian areas. Species such as green ash, box elder, and basswood, or linden, as they're also known, may dominate along our eastern rivers, while cottonwood, ash, and box elder may be more common in the western part of the state. Other associated species include American elm, hackberry, bur oak, and willow. Conservation tree plantings generally refer to farmstead plantings, shelter belts, living snow fences, wildlife plantings, riparian buffer strips, and others that are designed to achieve conservation, economic, and societal goals. North Dakota has a long history of tree planting efforts where early settlers planted trees to provide wind protection, fuel, and food. The Dust Bowl of the 1930s had far-reaching social, economic, and environmental consequences, which accelerated tree planting programs. Tree planting efforts have continued throughout the state into present times. And lastly, our community forests. These include boulevard trees, trees planted in city parks, and trees that occur naturally within city limits and public right-of-ways. The management of these tree resources may fall under the responsibility of city foresters, public works departments, and/or community tree boards. Common tree species found in our residential communities include cultivars of elm, linden, ash, oak, hackberry, and silver maple. There are a lot of things that we can do to determine what type of tree we have, but the best by far is looking at our leaves. The first obvious distinction between trees, which will usually be the first step when going through a dichotomous key, is if we have needles or broadleaf leaves. Broadleaf trees live in areas where the soil is nutritious enough to provide a new set of large sun-collecting leaves every single spring. Photosynthesis occurs at a rapid rate when the sun shines and the weather remains warm. The cooler weather of autumn reduces essential sugar production. The leaves lose their green chloroplast cells needed to capture sunlight, and various underlying colors appear and the leaves fall to the ground. Energy moves into the roots and the trees enter its winter dormancy. I thought it would be good to talk about some general leaf anatomy. Some of these terms are referred to in our dichotomous keys, and so I thought it'd be good to kind of just go through some of the basic terms that you would need to know for broadleaf trees. I'll start off with our twig. That's this main little branch right here. A twig is basically just a thin, short branch on a tree. Connected to that twig, we have our bud, and a bud on a plant is where that leaf develops from. Connected to our bud, we have our petiole, this piece of tissue right here. Our petiole is a thin stalk that attaches the leaf to a stem. Our base of our leaf is right here, where that petiole connects to the leaf tissue. Next, we'll look at our midrib, which is this main vein that goes through the center of our tree leaf. It's usually a strengthened vein along that midline of the leaf, and connected to that are the rest of our veins within our leaves. And these are vascular tissue bundles that support the leaf and transport nutrients throughout. At the very tip, we have what is called the apex. That's just basically our leaf tip. And then we also look at the margins or the outside edge of the tree. And this is useful in identifying trees as well. If we're looking at broadleaf leaves, we then look at a few other indicators. And the first is our leaf composition. Leaves originate from one bud. If within that bud, the leaf is one singular leaf, we call that a simple leaf, showed here on the left. See that one bud connected to that one petiole, connected to that one leaf. Examples of simple leaves would be like maple, oak, birch, linden, etc. If our leaf from the bud is made up of multiple leaves, we call that a compound leaf, like the one here on the right. This entire makeup is considered the leaf, everything within the circle, and the individual parts of the leaf are called leaflets. So this entire thing within our circle is our leaf, and all of these little leaf pieces, I like to call them, are leaflets. Examples of compound leaves would be green ash, honey locust, and box elder. Here's a photo of a simple leaf. Connected to that twig is one bud, connected to that one bud is one petiole, and connected to that one petiole is this one leaf. Alternatively, on the right here, we have a compound leaf. This is a green ash tree. You'll see there's one bud here connected to one petiole, and connected to that one petiole is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 leaflets. And so when we're referring to the compound leaf, again, everything within the circle is considered our leaf, and all these little pieces within it are our leaflets. The next thing we look at is what's referred to as leaf arrangement. How are those leaves arranged on your branch? I'll start off on the left here. We have what is called opposite. You'll notice the branch twig in the middle, and you see that these leaves are coming off from that same point on the branch. They're right across from each other. That is called opposite. We have alternate here in the middle. You'll see we have a branch here in the middle. You'll notice that this first leaf comes off to the left-hand side. If we go a little ways up, the next leaf will come off on the right. Again, you go up a little bit more, it's on the left again, and so it's alternating on that branch. And then on the right here, I have what is called whorled. Now, this isn't a very common leaf arrangement, but I thought I'd bring it up anyway. In the whorled orientation, we have all of these leaves coming off from a central node, and it goes all the way around that branch. So what this looks like in actual tree photos, here on the left, I have opposite again. You'll see these two buds occurring right across from each other on the branch, and those leaves coming off opposite from each other on that branch as well. In the middle, we have alternate again. We see that bud and that petiole, it's going off to the left. You go a little ways up, it goes off to the right, and then a little ways up more, it's going to go off to the left again. So it's alternating. And then here's an example of whorled. Again, not very common. Most of the trees in North Dakota we are going to see are either opposite or alternate. And if you know me, you know that I really like mnemonics or things to help you remember things about trees. And so the one that foresters use is called Mad Bucking Horse. And this is a mnemonic that's used to help remember trees that have opposite leaves. There's actually not a lot of trees out there that have opposite leaves. The vast majority are going to be alternate. But Mad Bucking Horse just details what specific trees have that opposite leaf orientation. And so the MAD stands for maples, ash, and dogwood, MAD. And then bucking would refer to buckeyes, and horse would be our horse chestnuts. So Mad Bucking Horse, maples, ash, dogwood, buckeyes, horse chestnut. If that helps you remember it, that's great. When we are looking at our compound leaves, we have a few other descriptor words to help determine what type of tree that we have, what type of compound leaf. And so the first thing we're going to look at is what is called pinnate. It's a word that just means having leaflets arranged on either side of the stem, typically in pairs opposite each other. And so here on the left, I have what is called odd pinnate. A good example of this is our green ash tree. Again, you can see these leaflets. If we count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there are 7 leaflets. And so it would be odd pinnate. Here in the middle, I have what's an example of even pinnate. A good example of this would be like a walnut tree. And that is just showing that all of these leaflets are right across from each other. There's no terminal one on the end to make it that odd number. And I am missing a little leaflet right here in the picture, but imagine there's one there. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 leaflets. And so because 16 is an even number, it would be even pinnate. And then there are some trees out there that are further subdivided pinnately. An example of this would be honey locust or Kentucky coffee tree. Those two trees are more commonly found in community forests planted in cities and towns. But you will notice that this is a compound leaf, so everything that I'm circling here is our leaf. And you'll notice that what would be one leaflet is actually further subdivided into more leaflets. And so this would be called bipinnate because it's doubly pinnated. And then another arrangement that we look at with compound leaves is called palmate. And so if you notice here, everything I'm circling here is considered our leaf. This is an Ohio buckeye leaf. Attached to that one petiole, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaflets. But you'll notice that instead of occurring opposite from each other on that leaf, they actually connect at this one central node together. And the reason we use the term palmate is because it resembles the palm of a hand. So you'll notice, again, with these leaflets, they all kind of come together at that one central node. Think of that as like fingers, and the central node is our palm, if that's a way to help you remember what palmate is. All right, next thing we look at is the actual shape of the leaves. The first one I'll go into is called lanceolate. This is a leaf that is long and thin that tapers towards the apex of the leaf, kind of in the shape of a spearhead. That's kind of where they get the word lanceolate, like the top of a spear. Willow trees are a good example of this type of leaf shape. In the middle, I have what is called cordate. In Latin, cordis means heart, and so cordate means heart-shaped leaves. You'll notice that at the base of this tree leaf, the leaf base kind of comes in this inverted point, and that helps it make it that rounded shape to be in the shape of a heart. A good example of a cordate tree is linden trees. They have beautiful cordate leaves. And then lastly on this page, I have what is called deltoid. In Greek, the delta symbol is a triangle, and so deltoid means triangular shaped. You'll notice here at the base of this cottonwood leaf, it's almost level as compared to our cordate leaf right next to it. You see it comes into that point. It's almost level right here. So you can see the leaf is almost in the shape of a triangle. Next, we have ovate on the left here. Basically, this just means that the leaf is oval shaped. Sometimes it can be more oblong. In the case of this elm leaf here on the left, you'll notice that the base of this leaf is actually asymmetrical. That's very diagnostic for our elm tree leaves. So the leaf shape can give us clues to identifying the tree, but base can also be used to take into consideration what type of tree that we have. And in the case of the elm as well, we also want to look at the apex of the leaf too. Some trees have perfectly rounded tips, while this elm comes to a very sharp point. And then these next two trees relate to the leaf's shape and also the margins. We can have leaves that are lobed, or they have distinct rounded or pointed projections on the outside of the tree leaf. We see those terms pinnate and palmate used again here, referring to how the lobes are oriented on these simple leaves instead of referring to them as compound leaves. In the middle, we have our pinnately lobed leaf, which is common for many oak species. Pinnate in this scenario means that the lobes are symmetrical along the axis of the midrib. So you'll notice here's that midrib, and you'll see that the lobes are coming off in kind of these big sinuses. And you'll notice that the lobes occur across from each other against that midrib. Now on the right, we have our palmately lobed leaf. You'll notice for this, the veins and subsequent lobes of the leaves all originate from the base of that leaf. Many maples have this shape, as well as the white poplar, which is my favorite tree. All right, the outer edge of our leaf blade is referred to as the leaf margin, and this is another characteristic used to identify and classify trees. A smooth edge is called an entire margin. There are no teeth or notches taken from the edge. It's smooth and complete. An example of this in North Dakota is our lilac trees and shrubs. Another margin type is toothed. This covers three terms. We have serrate, dentate, and crenate. So I'll start with serrate. In serrate margins, they have leaf margins where we have little teeth that are like those of a saw. They're continuous and they're forward pointing towards the apex of the tree leaf. Dentate margins have continuous teeth which point outwards. You can see that here in this bottom left corner. We have dentate, so instead of pointing forward towards the apex of that leaf, it actually points outward. And a good example of this margin would be our cottonwood trees. And then lastly, we have crenate, pretty much the same as dentate, but in this case, the teeth tend to be rounded. And so crenate would be right up here in this top right corner. You can see that they're rounded. I can't think of any trees in North Dakota off the top of my head that have this margin type, but an example of a forb that does have this is ground ivy. So it's got these rounded teeth on the outside. Occasionally, we will see these margins be doubled. In the case of American elm, the margins are what are called doubly serrate, which basically means that those teeth have teeth. And you can see that in this bottom middle. You see that we have those teeth that are projecting forward, and those teeth actually have teeth alongside. And then lastly, we have our lobed margins. We talked about this a little bit in the last slide, but basically the margin of the leaf is divided into these bigger pieces. And these can be spiky or they can be rounded as well. Since we live in North Dakota and many trees do not leaf out completely by the time we have our state competition for Envirothon, we can turn to a few other characteristics of our tree to help us identify it. This can be things like flowers if they're present on the tree. Silver maples and box elder trees actually have very inconspicuous flowers before they have leaves. Here in the bottom left corner, I have a female box elder flower. You'll notice it has these kind of droopy pieces that project off of where those leaf buds are going to be. Later in the season, we can see prominent flowers on trees like crabapples, plum, lilac, linden, and Ohio buckeye, which I actually have pictured here in the bottom left again. Ohio buckeye flowers are very distinct. They don't look like a lot of other trees. And so some of those flowers can help us identify what type of tree that we have. We can also look at seeds to give us clues. Sometimes a quick look on the ground around a tree will help us see some maybe discarded acorns around an oak tree, or even just the caps. Those can give us some clues about what type of tree we have. Another example would be this honey locust tree in the top left with its large twirling seed pods dangling from its branches, almost resembling bananas. Sometimes I get that from people. Other things we look at would be if the tree has fruit. Those things can give us hints. The type, color, and taste of fruits can help us determine what type of tree that we have. I will say that if you don't 100% know what type of fruit that you have on your tree, do not taste it. One example here I have is chokecherry in the top right, which is our state fruit. The berries hang in a drupe on the tree, and if you open a fruit up, it actually has a pit instead of seeds like an apple. So those type of things can help us identify what type of tree that we have. Bark can be a really helpful tool to help us ID a tree. Paper birch, pictured here in the middle, and quaking aspen, they're both known for having this white colored bark with these black markings on it. And lastly, even if the tree isn't leafed out yet, the buds can give us a lot of clues, whether it's the buds themselves or catkins that come off of them. Pictured here in the bottom right, we have quaking aspen catkins, which are actually a type of flower. They're fuzzy and almost look like little squirrel tails, but you see them coming out of these large gummy brown buds. And those large gummy buds are diagnostic for trees in the poplar family. If we look at this photo now, we have some box elder buds. And box elder buds are always silvery gray, and you can notice that they occur opposite from each other on the branch. So using, again, that mad bucking horse mnemonic, you can narrow it down to maple, ash, dogwood, buckeye, and horse chestnut, even without any leaves on that tree. All right, thank you so much. I will include some additional resources with this video, but I hope you guys learned something and I hope it helps you at the competition here in May.